Welcome back to the Author Entrepreneur Collective, the show where we help nonfiction authors turn their books into businesses and their stories into lasting impact. I'm your host, Stacy Matson, author of Bucket List Living and founder of Bucket List Unlimited. Every author has a story. Today's guest is Bethanee Syversen, author of Mustard Seed Faith. Welcome, Bethanee.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your book?
The short of it is I'm a wife of almost 30 years in January, mother of six kids, which would defy I guess, the thought process that having children was easy for us because my book then is about our 10 years of infertility, seven miscarriages, adoption, and just kind of our my faith throughout that and God's sovereignty through that.
Nice. I'd love to start at the beginning. What inspired you to finally write Mustard Seed Faith?
It was less inspiration and more that I felt like God told me to do it. The Our last two kids are adopted twins, and they were about 3 months old. And it was chaos. We had four older kids, and it was nowhere even remotely in my thought process that I was going to write a book or that I should write a book. But one day I was having my quiet time reading my Bible and journaling, and I felt like I just heard the Lord say, "You need to write a book about this journey because I want to be able to use it to help other women that are struggling in this same kind of journey." So I was like, okay. So I would set my alarm for 5 a.m. At that point, the twins were sleeping about until 8 o'clock every morning. So I just kind of treated it like a business because I realized I would never get it finished with the chaos of six kids and essentially newborn twins if I didn't just treat it like a business. So from 5 to 8 every day, I would work on the book. Five in the morning until 8 in the morning. I would just kind of work on the book or until the boys woke up. Um, and so it was less inspiration and more that I felt like God told me to do that, and I just wanted to be obedient to Him.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I kind of did the same thing with my book, right? I didn't put it on the calendar, but I would like write 1,000 words a day, right? So you need to
Yeah,
have a schedule to do it, to
some
make
kind of
it happen.
structure. Yeah,
Yeah. So you said this book isn't just about infertility. It's really a story about hope. When did
yeah.
you realize your journey might encourage other people?
Um, I don't. Probably while I was writing it, honestly. There was throughout our whole process because we went through 10 years of infertility, like I said, and then we went through 4 years of trying to adopt and three failed adoptions in that, seven miscarriages in the first half of trying to conceive. um, I think when you're in the throes of that, it's somewhat hard to feel like you could offer hope to anyone because sometimes it just feels so hopeless. um, there would be times where I would have friends tell me that the way that I handled things, the way that I handled losses with grace and, not being angry at God really inspired them. But I still don't know that I felt like I was bringing hope to anybody. But I think it was about maybe a quarter of the way through writing the book that as things started unfolding in the book, as I started, the book has little gray boxes in it, and they'll have like, encouragement. Like, if this is you, if you're walking through this, this is, and then I'll have like a little nugget of, advice or a word of encouragement. Um, and then I did that as well for readers that might read the book who maybe their daughter is going through this kind of stuff or her best friend is going through it, you know. And so I think it was somewhere along the way in writing the book that I really felt like I really hope and I pray that this will bring hope and encouragement to any readers that read the book.
Was it difficult to be that vulnerable writing the book?
Um, yes and no. I'm a talker and I process. all my thoughts verbally. And so it's not uncommon for me to just talk about my feelings and my emotions anyway. So it's not that that part was hard. I think what was vulnerable were there were aspects of it that were vulnerable. As an example, there was a time when we were going to a fertility clinic, and I had a really late first trimester miscarriage, and the doctor said we're going to have to do a D&C. And so it was the only one I ever had. I denied others after that one, but when I had that and I was in the room and they were prepping me, the doctor came in and it wasn't just that he didn't have good bedside manner. I felt like I was violated, um, sexually violated. And it was so when I was writing about that, I felt like that was pretty vulnerable. And that was not something that my family knew about or my husband did, but not like my mom and my dad and my friends. Nobody really knew about that. So writing about that part of it was a little bit vulnerable. But I think in general, I'm just kind of an open book. And I hope that my talking helps people.
Nice. What is a DNC?
I mean, I don't know what it stands for, but basically they have to go in and kind of wipe bring the remnants of the baby out of you. Um, yeah,
Okay.
I'll pause.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
pause there.
Too much information. Yeah. I just didn't know. And maybe some of the viewers wouldn't know. You,
It's in essence the same kind of process that they use for abortions, and which is why I ended up never going back and having another one. But I don't want to. I don't necessarily want to get into that conversation on your podcast. But I didn't realize that it was one and the same kind of process. But in essence, it's kind of the same thing where they have to go into the uterus and clean out. But my baby had already died, so
that's so sad. You said you experienced 7 miscarriages over 14 years. Looking back now, what
over
carried,
10 years. Yeah.
oh, 10 years? Okay. Looking back now, what carried you through the darkest seasons?
God, 100% it was God. There were so many times. It was kind of weird. It seemed like every other miscarriage hit me really hard. My first, my third, my fifth, and my seventh were all like just really devastating to me. I don't know if two, four, and six weren't because I was numb. Like frequently the pattern would go, it would take me a really long time to get pregnant. And then I would finally get pregnant. And then I would be pregnant for some period of time. And that varied between 5 weeks and almost 13 weeks. And so that varied. And then I'd eventually lose that baby and then get pregnant like right away again, typically. And so I don't know. I don't know why my body did that. But yeah, I think it, it was, they were all really devastating, but they were, yeah, two, one, three, five, and seven. I just remember crumbling on the ground and weeping and sobbing and just not handling those ones super well.
The title comes from the idea of mustard seed faith. What does that mean to you?
There's a passage in the Bible, and it talks about if we have faith the size of a mustard seed, we can move mountains. And um, I, I just throughout this whole process, I felt like I just always had to continue to have faith. Not that God was going to give me what I was asking for, because maybe He wasn't, and I had to learn to be okay with the fact that maybe we weren't supposed to be parents, or maybe not parents to a large family like we were hoping. Um, and so I had to come to grips with, just because we ask for something and pray for something doesn't mean that God is obligated to answer it the way that we were hoping for. But I also had to hold on to hope. And so having faith, I just had to keep coming back to that. A mustard seed I believe it's the smallest seed, but don't quote me on that. But it's just super tiny. And so I just had to keep hoping, and relying on the fact that God was there. He was walking me through this whole process. And so if I just continued to have faith that He was there and walking me through the process, again, not necessarily answering the way that I wanted, but walking with me through the process, that I was going to be okay, and that whatever the journey, however the journey ended, that it was going to be okay. And there's a story in the book that I share where nearly at the end of our adoption process, I came to that kind of moment where I went up to the front of the church during a Sunday service, and I just laid down in at the altar, and I just had to throw up my hands and say, God, I give all of this to you. If we're never meant to adopt, I have to still be okay with you. My relationship with you is what's most important, and I have to, that has to remain constant. And right now I'm really angry at you, and I don't want to be angry at you. And so, it did come to this point where I had to make a choice of, not my faith, but like, you know, it is set it adopting and growing our family in essence kind of became an idol. And it was like, no, God, I need to be okay with you. I'm angry at you, and I'm kind of idolizing this idea of adoption that I felt like you gave us and put in our hearts way back before any of our infertility, way back in college when my husband and I met. We talked till the wee hours of the morning, and one of the conversations that we had was that we both knew that we wanted to adopt someday. And so the adoption of our boys has nothing to do at all with our infertility or our 7 miscarriages. It just so happened to be that we had infertility and miscarriages. But those boys were always planned for, wanted. We were saving money for their adoption, way back from when we first got married in 97. But there had been a point, because the adoption process was no easier than the trying to have our own biological children. In a way, I would almost say that it was more devastating to me, even through 7 losses, the losses of I don't know, that's hard to say. They were both just so devastating. But anyhow, I had a come to Jesus moment nearly at the end of that adoption process, where I had to give it all to God.
You write about God showing up in unexpected ways. Can you share one moment that still gives you goosebumps?
Yeah, it's so clear in my mind. So the moment that right before the come to Jesus moment type of thing, where I went up to the altar, we had just gone through an incredibly devastating failed adoption. All that money that we had been saving from since we were in college, we lost nearly all of it through a scam adoption. I mean, it was with 2 real legit attorneys, but we ended up finding out that we, along with 10 other families, just the ones that we know of here in our home state, all went through the same exact kind of scamish process. We all lost money. None of us ended up with children from Arizona. It was just really, really awful. And so we lost most of our money. Our attorney here in our state, she'd offered to give us a little bit of money back, but she didn't give us all of the money. So out of $35,000, we had about $4,000 left. And so we were like, this is it. Like, we don't have money to adopt again. Like, this is it. We've lost everything. Um, and again, there's a 4-year process before this. Like, we tried to be foster parents. Like, it's all in the book, but it's a 4-year process of just one devastating blow after another, after another, after another, that led us eventually to this failed adoption. And so I don't remember the exact details. I know the numbers are in the book, but at the moment I don't remember the exact details, but roughly, I think like 4,000. We had maybe like 3 or 4 different friends that offered to do some fundraisers for us. So all said and told, we again, don't remember the exact numbers now, but all said and told, we had like 8,300, and I'm just going to make it up, like $11 and some change that was between what our attorney gave us back and what was fundraised for us. One college friend, a couple, they had been saving for their own adoption, and they ended up adopting just straight out of foster care, so they didn't need any funds. So they gave us $2,000, and then a couple of other friends did some small fundraisers, and so we were like about 8,300 and change. And the when we ended up finding out about the twins, our attorney said that she would essentially just charge us for the money that she had given back to us. And then the twins' grandmother, her sister, was a family attorney. So not adoption, but a family. And she offered to do her end pro bono. And she said if our attorney would kind of just walk her through the process of what paperwork needs to be, filled out and all that kind of stuff, that she would do for her nephew's sake, she would do that side pro bono. So all said and told, again, I'm going to kind of make up the numbers, but it was like the adoption cost us for twins, for our boys, it cost us 8,300 and like $12. I mean, it was just dollars off from what we needed. And it was almost a perfect match down to the dollar. It was just so incredible. And I absolutely, not only do I credit God, but like that moment that I walked up to the altar and I laid it all before God, and I just knelt before the altar and I said, God, you can have all of it. Like, have my hopes, have my dreams, have this vision that I believe you birthed in both my husband and I, way back when we were teenagers. Have it all. And then it was 1 week to the day, the very next Sunday, that the twins and their situation was brought into our life by their grandmother, who goes to our church. It
Wow.
was so crazy. And then it was just a few, I think that was sometime in December. And then they were born April 6th. So just 4 months later, we were adopting twins.
That's amazing. That gave me goosebumps from that story. Yeah, I definitely know that's a God thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was down to almost the dollar. It was so wild.
Was writing the book healing for you, or did it reopen old wounds?
Oh, that's such a good question. Um, it definitely reopened a ton of old wounds as I was typing, through every miscarriage and through the failed adoptions. When I would get to like the heart of those stories, I always found myself crying again. Even now, if I like, the twins are 11 now, and one of them just asked, he came and said, Mom, when you're done reading the book that you're reading, I read quite a bit. And he said, when you're done reading the book that you're reading, can we read your book? And I was so taken aback. They know they're adopted, and they even know that I've written a book, but they've never asked me about the book or anything. And I mean, he knew the general premise of the book, but it's amazing, right? These little minds that you think are just talking about Legos and Minecraft or something, or they're like really thinking real thoughts in there. And sometimes it just takes me back. And I was like, oh yeah, buddy, yep, that's would be great. I said, that it has a lot about your story in there, right? And he's like, yeah. And so I've been reading one or two chapters a night to the boys for the last couple of weeks or so. And it's been really beautiful. They ask a lot of questions. Super tenderhearted. We're still working our way through the infertility and miscarriages stuff. And um, one of them, the one who asked to read the book, he was like, I'm so sorry, Mom, that you were so sad about all your babies dying. So it's just super sweet. But um, he actually asked if he could read the book. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I should read that with you, because I'm not 100%. I don't remember again all of the details that I put in the book about their story, but I know, like, as an example, their biological mother had made an appointment with Planned Parenthood to abort them, and she went to the appointment. I don't know that at 11 I want them to know that yet, So I asked them, I said, would it be okay if I read that book to you? And they were both very happy with that. So I think as I'm pre-reading the chapters to make sure that there's stuff that is appropriate for them. But there's so much stuff that I skip over to, like so much of the medical stuff about infertility. I'm like, I'm just going to skip all this medical. You don't even know about uteruses yet. Like, so yeah, it's been great.
That's awesome. If someone is carrying around a painful story they've never shared, what would you say to them?
I would say that I feel like not, and I think this is so poorly stated so often that somehow people believe that God caused things to happen and maybe even for a reason. I don't believe God caused 7 of my babies to die. I don't believe that God caused those failed adoptions. I think we live in a fallen world. There's sin, there's death, there's medical things that we don't know about. And that's not God. That's just living on planet Earth. And so I think that um, a message I would say is that one is to never believe that God caused pain to you. Like, that's not to say that we aren't going to have pain in our life, but it is to say that God isn't going around smiting people and taking them down and let me take this one down a notch. Like he's so gracious and he's so loving. And so I think that that is one message. And then I think the second part of that message is that in every story that we live, we have a message of some kind of hope, resiliency, grit, perseverance. There's some kind of message that can be, drawn from somebody's story. And so through my stories, and there's a lot of them through these 14 years. So it was 10 years of infertility and 4 years of trying to adopt, which is probably where you got the 14 from. But there's a lot of stories within that, and I think there's so much hope that can be, you know, that I feel like I can give to people, but not even me, God, through the stories and stuff. So I think that a message would be that you have God has given you a story and He's given you a voice. And sometimes it can feel vulnerable to talk about that, but sometimes it may just be the exact thing that people need to hear. Um, we were going through something as a family with one of our kids, and we felt like we were the only family going through this, and because nobody talked about it. And so my husband and I just felt super alone and just lonely through the process. And then we ended up finding out by pure accident that this family and this other family and this other family, they're all going through the same exact thing. And I thought, why is no one talking about this? Because if we were talking about it, we would all feel more connected. We'd be able to be a support system for each other. Um, and yeah, so I think realize that the stories that you've lived have messages tied to them, um, and that they can bring hope, they can bring healing, they can at least bring shared experiences where you don't necessarily feel alone. I know something I hear from women all the time going through infertility is that they feel so alone. Um, but I mean, the numbers, statistically speaking, we are so not alone. It's 1 in every 4 women will have at least one miscarriage. And so, just on that alone, we are very not alone. But it can feel very isolating and very alone, especially when you start to see your friends getting pregnant and they're having babies at the same due date that you were supposed to have a baby or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we all need connection and community, right? So it's
Yeah,
good to get your
exactly.
story out there so you can connect with the people that you need to connect with.
Yeah.
What has surprised you most since becoming an author?
Uh, um, I, this is going to be a much more practical answer, I think, than maybe you're looking for, but it's how hard it is to get the message out there. It's so hard to get people to know that there's resources out there, that my book is out there. I just did a press release, and for whatever good or bad that is, my email is now flooded with a tremendous amount of people trying to sell me their services on helping me sell my book now. It's been overwhelming, actually. But um, oh, what was your question again? I got off track.
What has surprised you most since
Yes.
becoming an author? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes, about selling the book. So it's been that. There's so many things because I self-published. So I suppose if I had a big, publishing agency that was, you know, took the book and walked away with it type of thing, it would be much easier. But I self-published. And so yeah, it's hard to get that information out there. This is what I was saying. So the flood of emails, though, many of them have said your story isn't just infertility or miscarriages or adoption, and they're talking about it from an SEO perspective on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and stuff like that. But they're like, it's really a story of hope and perseverance, and it's true. I would say that's really what the book is about, and God's faithfulness. But it's, how do you get that story out? How do you, because it isn't just people who are walking through infertility and miscarriages and the adoption process. The resonating, you know, part of the book is that there is hope in Jesus Christ, and that you know, if you are walking with God, that He's going to provide so much love and hope for you. And it's been a hard message to get out.
Yeah. And that's actually, to that note, like that's why I started this podcast, actually, because I noticed that it's hard for authors to market their books, right? Especially if you self-publish. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I can interview authors on my YouTube channel, and at least they might have a few more readers come out of it, right? So, and it's
Yeah.
free for everybody. So, yeah, it's kind of why I started this podcast. So,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
yeah. Has anyone ever reached out after reading your book and completely changed your perspective on why you wrote it?
No, but um, I I don't know, maybe not perspective, but I've had three different women reach out to me from across the world, and they told me things that I was not expecting to hear as a result. So maybe perspective. I really wrote it as a message of hope and like God walking through you through the process type of thing, right? And then to give some like encouragement and stuff like that, like the little tidbits that are throughout in the little gray boxes and stuff. But these three women, one of them wrote, and she said that because of my book, she rededicated her life to Jesus Christ. And I was so blown away by that. And I was not expecting that. There's not like a call to Jesus in the book. There's not an altar call kind of thing in the book. I just literally share my personal walk with Jesus throughout 14 years of hardship and trials. And so I wasn't expecting that. And then shortly thereafter, I received two more emails from women in different places in the world, and they had given their life to Jesus Christ because of my book. So yeah, I was not expecting that at all.
That's amazing.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful, but not expected.
Yeah, that's it's a ripple effect, right? You never knew who your book is going to reach or how your story is going to affect people.
Yeah.
If your book could leave readers with one lasting message, what would you hope they remember?
Uh, I mean, I guess honestly, it would have to be um, that God walks with us, and in such practical ways, like it not just like this, you know, floating thing in the sky type of thing, but that He loves us and He cares for us. And there's a verse in the Bible that talks about God clothes the flowers and feeds the birds. And I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact wordage, but and it says, how much more will he clothe you and love you? And it's like, you know, it's that message that he's walking with us. Like we're in a relationship with him. And when we understand that, relational, like you and I are having this conversation and that's relational, and we're having relationships with our spouses and our children and that's relational, that he wants that from us and or with us. And so I think that would be the ultimate message. But then kind of subset of that would just be that you're not alone in walking through whatever trial that you're going through, both because there is a God who loves you and is always walking with you and just waiting for you to, cry out to him, but also because there's a host of other people that are walking similar paths. I mean, even if you take some of the most rare diseases, you can still find, even if it's a small community, you can still find a small community of people that are walking down that same path, and so that you're never alone. We just went through something with our 17-year-old daughter. She was 16 at the time, and she attempted suicide, and that was devastating. But it was, the amount of people that came out of the woodworks and said, my son tried this and my daughter attempted this. And, you realize like we're never ever alone. There are people walking through the same thing. And so I think finding that community of people, I think it's easier now than it's ever been because we have such an array of social media outlets and stuff. We have groups that we can belong to at Facebook, and we have people we can follow and pages you can follow and stuff about pretty much all topics now. But yeah, I think it would be those two things. God loves you so deeply. And in this world, you're not alone because there's a God who loves you, but then there's community who are walking through the same thing.
Yeah, agreed. How's your book open doors you never expected?
Um, I don't know that I didn't, I guess I haven't had any that I didn't expect. Um, which maybe is a disappointment, but I have walked through some doors that I was hopeful that they would open, like speaking at some medical conferences, and being on various podcasts and stuff like that. I guess honestly that could be one that I could say. I was not like a huge podcast listener. I read a lot of books and stuff, but I was not ever someone that would just turn on a podcast. And so to be invited to be on podcasts, I guess, yeah, that would be an unexpected one. But I had hoped that I would have an opportunity to speak at medical conferences and stuff to give a kind of a back end perspective of like, you guys are very technical and sterile in your conversations, but your bedside manner means a whole lot. And how, you have to realize when we're coming in with another miscarriage or another failed month of infertility or whatever, that we are coming in with real and raw emotions. And so I have been able to share that message at medical conferences, and that's been honestly super gratifying because I'm hoping that it's making a difference in how fertility doctors approach the women, not just from a clinical perspective, but from a heart perspective as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. For someone who feels God calling them to write a book, but they're afraid, what would you tell them?
I would say just start putting pen to paper or fingers to a keyboard. I just read the most beautiful book this week, or this month. Actually, it was this week as well. Theo of Golden. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it is just this super beautiful book, filled with beauty and nostalgia. And it's a guy's debut book, and it is now a New York Times bestseller. And he does. I listened to it as on Audible, and I can't remember if it's at the beginning or the end of the book. I think it was the end of the book. But he has this whole, thing that you can read or listen to. And he's like, I wasn't expecting to write a book, and I just was playing around and my friends were like, oh, you should do this. And basically he never in, he never intended to write a book, and he talked about how this book happened completely in essence on accident. And it is just such a beautiful book. It is. It's funny. Right before the podcast, I was working on a write up of my June reads, and I usually put them out um, on my social media feeds and stuff like that, and so people can have a list of things they might want to start reading for their next month or whatever. And I was like, oh, this one was my favorite of the whole month. But anyhow, so all that to say, I would say, just like him, just like me, just start doing it. When his book was finished, he had the whole manuscript, he had everything, and he was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna like set that aside. Surely nothing's gonna come of that or whatever." Of course, I'm paraphrasing this man's words. I don't fully remember them all, but and then a couple of his literary friends were like, "Oh, can we read it?" And they read it, and they were like blown away by it, as they should have been, because it's such a beautiful book. So you just never know. You never know who you're going to reach. You never know what's going to pour out of you, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And you don't ever know, the reach that it's going to have and the healing that it can bring. So I would say just start doing it. And even if you're afraid, just keep doing it. But some advice I gave to one of my friends who's just starting to write his book. Um, it was the what I started out with was just make it a commitment, like set aside, like you did as well, like set aside time where that's just, or a goal, like you had 1,000 words a day. I just had like from five to until the boys wake up. That's just the time I'm going to do it. So yeah, I would say just do it and see what happens.
I love that. Your book changed readers' lives. How has it changed yours?
Um, it This is such a weird question to answer. It changed mine because as a kid, I was not a reader and never thought I would. I mean, like, I never even entertained writing a book because I never even read books. I had graduated high school without having, I read only one book from cover to cover, and that was Of Mice and Men. I did a lot of skim reading so I could pass the tests and, whatever. But it was meeting my husband, who's an avid reader, and we met essentially in college. And I just watched him read and read and read. And I was like, oh, what's this whole reading thing about? Like, and he'd always say, well, the books are better than the movie. I'm like, I don't know, the movie was pretty good. And he'd always say, no, but the books are so much better. And so slowly, I have become an avid reader. And so, yeah, what was your, I get so off track. What was your question again?
How has it, your book changed readers' lives? How has it changed yours?
Yes, it's changed mine because I remember the day that my publisher, I mean, it was self-published, but they printed it and stuff, and
Yeah.
they sent me a box of books. And I remember opening up that box and like just seeing your work, seeing all of the effort and the love and the care and the details. Every detail that you put into a book is it's representative of hours worth of your life and your work and creativity and yeses and nos and all of that stuff. And so you pull that book out of the box and it's like your own unboxing, and it's just like, I don't know, it's so cool. And so how it's changed my life is, I mean, like, nothing big and grand has changed. I'm not a New York Times bestseller, like there's nobody knows my name. It's not like it's changed my life in any of those kind of ways, but it's changed my life internally of how I think about myself. I'm just like, I did that. I persevered through the not knowing how. I self-published. I found my own editor. I found my own graphic designer. I designed the cover. I mean, she designed it, but like I gave her all the visionary ideas of what I wanted the cover to look like. And like just going through that whole process and then having that book arrive at your house is pretty cool. So I would say that it just made me more proud of myself, like, oh, okay, I can do hard things. And yes, I lived through 14 years of kind of hell and turmoil and all that kind of stuff, but this is a different kind of perseverance and grit. It took a lot of effort, heart, a lot of early morning days and a lot of back and forth with editors and oh, the editing process. I think about it now though, and I'm like, dang, there's AI. I could have just put my whole manuscript in AI and been like, edit this, and then just, been like, okay, good. Now the grammar's all good. And but that was not a thing back when I was writing the book. So yeah.
Yeah. I published fairly recently and I still didn't think about it. So,
Yeah.
do you have anything? That's all the questions I have. Do you have anything else to share with the audience that you want them to know?
um, hmm, I don't know. I guess I am in the process of turning it into an audiobook. So if you're not a reader, which seems like you would be a reader listening to this podcast, but if you're not a reader, I don't have a timeline, but the studio that I'm recording it in, he is in Tennessee until I think the end of July. So I know the recording process is going to take 3 days to record. But it will be sometime in August. I'm hoping that he'll have it fully edited and get it up on Audible. I'm hoping by, let's say, end of August. Maybe it'll be mid-August, but maybe end of August. So I guess that is something exciting about the book. And then yeah, other than that, I think it's mostly things that would be reiterating things that I've said is that there's a God loves you infinitely and cares about the details and the small matters of your life, but the really big matters of your life. And if you know anybody, if you're not personally walking through infertility or miscarriages or adoption process, but you know somebody, I definitely have heard tons of feedback from women who have walked through the path or are going through it, or know people that are going through it, and it has really helped them to walk through that process differently, or with a different perspective. There's been a couple of mothers who have reached out to me, and they had written me an email, and they just said, thank you so much. Because of your book, I now have a much greater understanding of what my daughter's going through, and I know how to better support her through this process. So if you're a mother, a grandmother, an aunt, best friend, I would say that this book might equally be for you as well, because I have so many like little helpful hints in there. And on that, it sounds like I'm pushing my book. I guess I would say that also I do not earn anything from this book. I donated 100% of the proceeds to a nonprofit, and those proceeds go to helping families that are adopting. So I always feel very confident pushing my book because I feel like, okay, I'm not trying to ask for your money. Like, I'm okay. But yeah, so I guess in another way that would be something is that every purchase of this book goes to help, a family that's trying to adopt. So
That's
yeah,
amazing. And thank you for sharing that. Probably a lot of people don't know that. So, that will help
yeah.
a lot of people. Bethany, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing and such an honest and faith-filled conversation. I think this will help a lot of people. If today's conversation inspired you, here's my challenge. Don't let your story stay in your journal, and someone needs what you've lived through. Be sure to subscribe for more conversations with best-selling authors, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who are using their stories to create impact. Until next time.